Welcome, everyone. Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, I want to talk about what is the Antichrist energy. And this is something that's greatly misunderstood, as everything else in this reality is. And somehow this is hooked up with Christianity, which is an interesting term unto itself. Really, what people in terms of that area are really involved in Jesusism. Churchianity is what they're involved in. The Antichrist, or Christ consciousness, and the Christ energy, the solar Christ, which comes from ancient times, way predating by thousands of years the Jesus story, is what everybody needs to understand. So the Antichrist, or the dark energy of evil taking over, is what the general term means. It has nothing to do with Christianity, which basically, as we know Christianity, Jesusism is really just part of the evil that is trying to take over this planet. Certainly, Christians preach nothing but destruction, evil, support all the systems of enslavement and evil, the military, the police department, the politicians. They support all these people against good people who are either trying to revolt against it or trying to make changes, because they stand for the status quo. Now, the status quo is evil. That's where Jesusism starts from. That funny, goofy little story that's been repeated hundreds of times, as is everything else in the Bible that has been regurgitated on the public here. Pushed on everybody by the Romans to try and disempower them so they could hold their empire better by creating a bunch of really weak-kneed, bend-over, grab-your-ankle types. And this has been pretty effective, particularly in modern time. So we have to understand that as that concept and not get it stuck into, well, that's a Christian belief. Now, the Christ, it wasn't Jesus Christ. That was not his last name. It's Jesus the Christ, and the concept of reaching Christ consciousness. Unfortunately, I used to use that term and shy away from it now because it's too connected with Christianity, and people don't understand that's a concept. So, the Christ, and of course, Jesus had to be taught by John the Baptist on how to be the Christ. Basically, he was a little Jewish kid. He was a rabbi training under somebody else, which is why advanced thinkers like the people who went over to the Middle East tended to gravitate towards John the Baptist, because he was the teacher. He was teaching everybody everything. And of course, that's why he was revered by people like the Knights Templar. It just makes sense. Why would you revere the student instead of the teacher? And this is how everything gets so messed up. But it's the whole idea of Jesus becoming the Christ, which was the solar Christ, to ascend past all the earthly nonsense and badness and evil into the solar Christ, the sun understanding, which comes from ancient religions like the Egyptians, where almost everything came from, particularly that is grabbed upon by every culture in the Middle East. And the problem is all those cultures are the same, and they all have variants that are all kind of the same. And they all have traditions and everything else. I'm shocked of how a conservative Jew is almost identical to a Muslim in terms of their practices, and their women cover themselves up and they can't be. It goes on and on, right down to what they eat is identical. So, kind of shocking. Again, it always seems to be the same people fighting against each other. So, if you're a Muslim, you fight against the Sunnis, fight against the Sunnis and the Shias, fight against each other when they couldn't have more in common. So this goes on and on. And of course, all the Christians hate the other Christians. So they don't even come together for their own survival, and that'll be their own peril in the future, as the American Indians wouldn't group together to fight the invading Europeans because they were killing each other all the time. So they're at war with each other. They weren't going to get together to then fight an outside source. That's a big mistake. So the whole idea is that it is the Christ consciousness. So you become the Christ. This is reaching, quote, Godhead, or some would call it Buddha head. These are titles like the Buddha is not the guy's name, wasn't Jack Buddha. It's that you reached a level. It's a title, like you have everything else, as you would be a general in the military, meaning you reach that high. So these are all the things that we have to keep in mind when we look through all these things to understand what's happening. So the Antichrist energy, the darkness energy, not the Christ solar energy, is, of course, the ultimate battle that has been going on for ever. So there's always the fight against the positive and negative forces, and certainly things seem to have made a turn for the worse because of the basic cowardice of people, because when they want or need help, as what's happened with the latest attacks on Christian ministers who are fighting Satanists, is that they all get wiped out. So that's helping the cause, right? That's really Christ consciousness. It's dumbball consciousness. You don't win a battle by taking your best people out and then trying to bring other people in. That's how you lose a war. So, and the war of attrition with them is horrific as they drop like flies in the attack of Satanists that are coming after them using radionic technologies. They don't have a chance. So all of this is really what's happening here, and that's what we have to understand, the difference between Christ consciousness, the anti-Christ energy, has nothing to do with the anti-Jesus energies that has been labeled as a Christ-level reached person who really did nothing and died so young. I don't know how we can really tell what this person was done, but another person, if you want to believe that fable, who was eliminated easily and quickly and was crucified, the old, of course, Persian method of killing people, and they invented all the really horrific ways of murdering people. The Iranians, the cousins of the Germans, have invented all that, and of course, this is what is happening again today. So we have all these things going on, and we need to understand the concept here. What is going on? What is the problem here? And by eliminating all these people, and I don't really consider them allies. I was considering contacting them to telling them that they're under radionic attack, which they wouldn't understand, but I'm not sure I support these people at all. They're very negative. They're easy to stab you in the back. They're going to stand together with all the corrupt, rotten people of the world. Now, you don't have any of these people coming out and objecting to people getting murdered in the street by police officers. They're not coming out fighting against another war, funding Nazis and giving billions of dollars while we rot in our own sewer and urine here and feces in the United States. Nobody cares about that. And these ministers aren't out there banging that drum. They're not out there banging the drum for anybody out there. They're usually banging the drum to persecute people like the gay community and others that they don't like. And of course, they don't like any other Christians. They don't like the Catholics. They don't like the Mormons. They don't like anybody, even though the world is on fire. And you think you could have at least a truce with these people to solve critical problems and work your problems out in the future. Because all of these Christian groups are all scumbuckets. You think they would be able to get along with people. They can talk about how they hate everybody. So I think they have a lot in common. But they don't, and they fight against each other all the time. So this is the kind of problem we run into. But we do have to understand that when you talk about the Antichrist, you're talking about evil energies taking over positive energies. We're not talking about the actual Christian belief or the Christian appointed head of their church, which is Jesus or any of the other people. It's the Christ consciousness, and people need to understand that. The problem is using the Antichrist, using those kind of terminologies, including Christ consciousness. All of this stuff is misunderstood as Christian Jesus stuff when it has absolutely nothing to do with it. These are old concepts that go back tens of thousands of years, way before the Messiah for everybody showed up only 2,000 years ago. I guess he was sleeping before that. They had to wake him up. Hey, get up, Jesus. We've been around for 2,200 years. Now we gotta get some help here. So the whole idea is that all of these things we have to clarify, but I mean, that's the right way to do it, to understand it. The point is the anti-Christ, the anti-good, the anti-the solar God energy has reached a level of strength at this particular point because nobody has done anything. And certainly the billionaire Christians aren't doing anything except flying around in their jets and talking their same nonsense. They haven't made any changes. They're not sticking up for anybody. They want to talk about how rich they can get because Jesus wants them rich. I don't see them doing much of anything except having very expensive planes, living in mansions, and getting a lot of money from a lot of hillbilly freaks that live in their own poo but want to give more money out to these people because they're better than them. It's really sad that we don't see any of these people in the streets or helping people in the front lines. They're there persecuting people, though. They're there. The Mormons funded by, I don't know, $100 million, $50 million to stop any kind of gay people from having marriages in California. They put lots and lots of money there. This is what we run into constantly. So these kind of concepts we have to look at. So we need to understand the bigger picture with everyone and understand what that term Antichrist means. And it doesn't mean Jesus. Until next time.